Hey, Mike.
Hey guys.
Hi. Yeah, nice introduction.
Yeah. So just the two of us today again. We are going to argue with each other a little bit. But,
Yay!
yeah. So we're going to be talking about I think something that's become a pretty controversial subject in free speech, freedom of speech.
Yeah. I think we generally are going to agree for the most part. I think there'll be a little bit here and there. It's weird. Some of the topics, it's like, I think doing research, and it's an interesting subject for me and it has been for a long time. Some of it has to do with like, people say just be kinder to other people, but then legislation getting involved to try to make that happen. And that's where the general like heat of the debate comes from. And then there's the third group who are like, no, fucking control everything.
Yeah.
And all three groups can't really talk to each other, which is weird.
It seems like a lot of groups can't talk to each other.
That's true.
It's like a lot. I think what got me originally thinking about this is just the fact that I think that a lot of us think that we have free speech, and we also like to think that we advocate for free speech, but we also constrict other people's speech on our own without realizing, you know what I mean? So I just kind of wanted to dive into it a little bit more. I know just things as little as like, well, we talk about comedy a lot, and we have like differing opinions on that. And it's like if you believe in free speech, you got to let people say whatever they want, but you just choose who you support and who you don't support, you know? And that's what it comes down to. But then you get things like, I think we talked about one of the very first episodes. It's like the guy from Duck Dynasty,
Yes.
Like you work for somebody, they are able to constrict your speech,
Correct.
You don't get to have free speech because you're under somebody else's umbrella, so.
Yeah, I actually found out that is actually not the case if you're a government employee. If you're a government employee, you can say whatever you want about your employer because they're a government body within means.
Yeah.
But if you are a police officer, and this goes for public universities as well, you're a public employee. So your boss can't force you to limit your speech. But if you are a private employee, your boss can say, no, that was hate speech, you're fired.
Yeah, and that's why like, that makes sense, because that's like why in California, marijuana is legal, but a company can still say they can test you for it, and you can't do it because they're a private company.
Yeah, I think California has different laws where they're starting to remove the amount of drug testing, but they can. Most private employers, especially, and this is how they really get around it in California, is if their home base is out of California. The company is technically from a different state.
Yeah.
You're employed out of a different state with different laws. But if you're in a California state employee, then, or a California business located, it's a little bit different. So, but I think the first subject that ever got me really interested about this whole subject was net neutrality. I think that's something a lot of people don't really understand. They get it, but they don't realize the internet is a much bigger scope than even Google. Like Google is just a database of all the websites, but it's been synonymous with the internet, but it's not. Google is a private entity that just houses where all these websites are. You might remember this back in the day before Google. You had to type in the website, and if nobody owned the website, it was just an error.
Yeah,
it was just an error. You got it wrong. It didn't redirect you back to Google to like, oh, here's probably what you meant.
What was the 404 error?
Yeah, the 404 error. Yeah. What I do for my work actually is to fix a lot of those 404 errors, so your website's a little bit better. But it's interesting that government bodies want to get involved with the freedom of that information, so that China's a great example of this, and Russia and a few other countries too, but they're the biggest, where your Google search, Google agrees to the laws of their land, and your internet search from Google is going to be very, very limited. Yeah, it's restricted. There's a service called I'm drawing a blank on it. It's not VoIP. It is. It's basically where you mirror your website and make it seem like it's from somewhere else, so that you can have unrestricted access. So that is actually going on in China, where those services are starting to get hammered because they're offering it and they're on the internet, and all these people from the general public are starting to use these mirroring services so that they can get unrestricted access to be able to search the internet like everybody else does. But in the United States, the real issue with the net neutrality is like a lot of the cable and the internet providers, we're trying to create packages for you to be able to purchase for different internet searching. And it's been shot down and burned down plenty of times.
I remember that being like everybody was like freaking out about over that, you know, and then that's what I was, I think that was brought up to me like a month or two ago, and I was like, like whatever happened with that? Like, and I haven't really looked into it to see like how it's affected us and how things are different now, but it's definitely nothing is ever as big as what we think it is, what we make it out to be. It's always like, it just usually blows over and things go on behind the scenes, but everything is always so blown out of proportion.
Yeah, that's true.
You know what I was thinking about yesterday is I kind of wonder how the Amazon's doing.
Amazon?
The rainforest.
Oh, yeah.
'Cause I haven't heard anything. Like, it's another thing that just blew over. Like, everybody was like up in arms about it, and then now everybody's like
onto something else.
Well.
Yeah, it's kind of that way with us, isn't it? Like a separate subject other than free speech, but like gun violence and all these other different things, like and even climate change. There's the constant like an upheaval and then quiet.
It's like whatever's in your face. Like we only care about what's in our face in the moment. And
correct.
The problem is that we can't stay focused on things.
No.
I think that's a lot of people. I think that's a problem, just with things like so much information being given to us. Like we can't stay focused on things, and I think that's why a lot of people are having trouble being successful, because they're like dogs chasing cars. They're like they see this. Like, well, when I do this, ooh, maybe I like that better than I like this. Like we'll find out. They never like stick with something long enough to like be successful at it,
True. Yeah. Just like jiu-jitsu. I mean, you can get your blue belt and you need fairly sufficient, but to get all the way to black, I mean, there's a reason there's so few black belts versus white belts.
And you got to make that commitment.
Yeah, years and years and years of commitment. But yeah, as far as like, it's interesting to watch how the rest of the world, because there's riots going on in China right now. Massive riots, and luckily maybe it's just our country, but like when I see like protesters and large movements, I don't generally see a lot of change happening from that. I see people protesting. Recently, some of my family members told me they were going to go protest in Minnesota for something. And I was like, oh, that's cool, good. Like, you stand up for what you believe. But then I thought about it, and I was like, I've never seen protesting since, what was it? Maybe it was the civil rights era that protesting actually did anything. But those riots were almost weekly in every single street throughout the country.
Yeah, it's well, there's a difference between protesting and rioting,
very big difference.
Being extremely an activist, like it seems like a lot of people that protest are just kind of whining, they're not really doing anything for change. They're just letting people know that they don't like it, and they're like making it annoying, but they're not really doing much to really solve anything or get anything changed in like legislation or whatever.
Yeah, it's interesting when you protest. I know some people who are very, very active within like the Bernie Sanders campaign, and they have been in it since like the day they heard about him. And even when he lost, they still kept going, and they got involved with government, and they got involved with legislation, and they still protest, but they also back it up.
Yeah, and that's how you do it.
Exactly. Yeah. If you really care about something, it's like the Stoic philosophy. If are you going to complain about hunger in Africa, and then just go about your merry way, or are you actually going to do something about it? So stop whining and actually do something.
Yeah.
I'm not saying all protesters do this, and I think protesting has a very strong, prominent place in America, and I think it almost tells the politicians how annoying is this going to be, so I actually have to do something to make these people go away, based off of how long the protesting goes.
And it also it raises awareness, and awareness is always like the first step of any change, like making people aware of something. And then maybe these protesters aren't going to be the one making the change, but somebody who wasn't aware of it that becomes aware of it might be the person to make that change.
Agreed. And that's where I think all this free speech comes in, because there are certain things that are not covered under free speech. Your monetary giving is technically can be considered free speech, but how it's given and by who it's given, that's kind of regulated. Violence, if you directly speak out and you're inciting, or violence happens within a short duration of your speech, that's not covered.
Okay. There's inciting a riot or inciting violence.
Yeah. Oh, here's a crazy one that I had no fucking clue about. Fighting words are not covered under free speech. If you basically speak out to somebody and you're basically inciting,
like, fuck you, fight me. Like,
not even fuck you, fight me, fuck you, who the fuck you, in getting in their face and stuff, like, that's actually illegal.
Really?
I was like, what the fuck?
Interesting. Yeah,
really?
That's so stupid. That's interesting.
That was interesting, but it makes sense, because it's like, if you imagine, the antagonistic kid, right? Me and my brothers are always antagonizing each other. But imagine, I won't say which one of the brothers did it, but imagine you constantly picking and pestering them, but you're not touching them. You're just fucking with their head, right? And then eventually they're like, all right, I've told you to stop. You're not going to stop. Here's my hand in your face. Like, it's
like you're giving them no choice,
they have a choice, but still
they do have a choice, but you're like pushing them so far to the point where you're doing everything but taking that first step. And just so you could say, like, well, I didn't start it. Like, I didn't hit him first.
Yeah, I didn't touch him.
Yeah.
That's illegal, apparently.
Yeah.
So I always thought that was interesting. I was just telling you before the show about South Park.
Yeah. Apparently, South Park is like, they are, as far as free speech goes, I think that they're like some of the most important people. Like, I think South Park is probably maybe the most important show when it comes to free speech, because they talk about the things that people tell them they can't talk about, and they talk about it in a way that I believe most of the time is pretty tasteful. It's not like, it's like pretty tasteful. It's like, no, it is. I think it's tasteful, and I think it's in a way where it's not like, they're not just like, oh, I can't say this, well, I'm going to say this, neener. They're like, they're saying it, and then there's something behind it. They're making a point with like what they're doing, and I appreciate it. I think it's really important.
Yeah. I think a lot of those, I think comedy plays a very critical point in free speech. One video I was watching was talking about showing the different polaring SNL skits of presidents. And they said, imagine a government where you couldn't say this about your president. And some of them were fairly nominal. But you don't want your government dictating what you can and can't say on every subject. Basically, I'm okay with the way the free speech is kind of laid out. You want to be able to criticize government and what they're doing and how they're doing things, not inciting violence, not inciting those kinds of things. I think, the Revolutionary War, it made sense, like why they actually went to war and how they did. But leading up to that point, there was nothing but like petitions to the government, like change your actions, change your actions, change your actions, change your actions, and sending representatives and doing it. Like they went all the way to the point. Even Benjamin Franklin's one of my absolute heroes, weird human being, but I absolute favorite. And he was actually like for the British for the longest time. And then finally he was just like, let's fuck him up.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
we're done.
Like,
We're done. Most people think he was a patriot from the beginning, and he wasn't.
Yeah. He's like, we tried. Like,
I talked to you guys.
give you all kinds of chances.
Yeah, and then when they finally fucked him over, he was like, all right.
Yeah.
But so I think there's a point for that, but you should be able to say whatever you need to say. And comedy is a way to kind of ease that tension, to like politically express your dissatisfaction with how they're doing government or what they're saying or what they're doing. Banksy with Bush with as a monkey, and then there's the other one with Obama as Hitler. Like that's not hate speech. You have the right to do that art. It may not be tasteful. People may not like it, but you have the right to say that.
Yeah.
Or draw it.
Well, I think you hit a big point though in saying like comedy is really how big it is in free speech, because when I was at some point in my life, I like realized how intelligent comedians are. Most of them are so intelligent, and they have so many more things going on than just like being funny. It's not like it's a difference between somebody doing like fart jokes and somebody going up there and talking about something that you can about, and something that's not funny and making it funny. And kind of pushing that envelope, and we've had a lot of conversations about that.
Agreed.
And so I'm a big fan of pushing that envelope, saying the things and just opening people's eyes. And I think the biggest problem with free speech is that it seems like we all want to say whatever we want, but we don't want people to say what we don't want them to say.
Yeah.
We get upset and offended by that, and it seems to be the biggest problem, I think.
Yeah, I agree. There's McKenna College is a great example, but they're not, as far as I remember, they're a private college, right?
Yeah, they're private.
So they have the right to fire their professors for what they say, or their dean, or however. It's shitty.
Yeah.
It shouldn't have gone down like that, because I really don't think it was justified. But they have the right to do that, because the rest of the body was like, yeah, that doesn't represent our business.
Yeah.
Because it is a business.
It is, yeah.
So they have the right to do that. But in the same sense, neo-Nazis have the right to wear swastikas, get swastika tattoos, and walk around with burning crosses if they want. If they put a burning cross up in your yard, that might be vandalism or trespassing, because that's illegal. But if somebody wants to have a flaming upside down cross in their front yard and it's their own yard,
they can do whatever the fuck they want.
They can do whatever the fuck they want.
And I'm all about it.
It's now, if they're inciting violence, if they're encouraging violence, if they're being discriminatory, that's another category that's more broad. Canada's been, we talked about this with Jordan Peterson with those crazy laws.
Yeah.
He has the right as a government employee. I believe he was a government professor. I don't believe he was private.
Oh, okay.
So he had the right to criticize, if I remember right. I could be mixing it up, whether he was private or public. But the big issue over there was transgender. It was a transgender laws, and there were legislation that was dictating what pronouns you could use to describe a person. And he was like, this is not how we work in society. And one anchor was saying, well, I would bristle if somebody called me, I'm Asian, and I'd bristle if somebody called me Oriental. And he's like, that was how society changed their language. And he's like, exactly, society changed their language, not legislation forcing me to use a pronoun.
Yeah.
I think this is where two of the bodies of sides argue with each other, because there's the legislation part where it's coming down to the semantics, and it really does matter because it dictates further legislation and how people interact in society by creating a law. But when it's social change, sometimes don't be a fucking dick.
Yeah.
If somebody prefers to be called Zim or Z or him or her, just respect that.
Yeah.
It's just common courtesy, but you have the right not to.
Yeah, you shouldn't have, your government shouldn't be forcing you to do, like the government shouldn't really be forcing you to do anything besides not harm somebody, I think physically harm someone. Like the government should be around to like make sure that we are able to make it through this life okay without being worried that somebody's going to come kill us or rob us or anything like that. But I think it's pretty stupid to push that onto somebody.
Here's where I think it gets a little misconstrued in this subject. Is there's a difference between hate speech, rudeness, and discrimination, and even violence. They're all very different categories. Like discrimination I think should be illegal.
Yeah.
The reason I think it should be illegal is because there are groups and entities that will literally make life unlivable for specific people based off of discrimination, race, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, and I believe if somebody's transgender, I don't think you should be denied an apartment because you're transgender.
Yeah.
But if the landlord wants to call you by whatever pronoun he wants to call you with, and you don't like him,
yeah,
that's not discrimination.
Exactly. I think exactly. Like discrimination, yeah, but that's not speech. You know what I mean? Like I think when it comes, they should be able to say whatever they want, because I think at a point like that's good for you, like to go through that. Maybe not to have it like on you all the time, but to be able to work through that, to have that. You know, if somebody's calling you something, or they're making you feel uncomfortable, and you it's really good to be able to find a solution on your own from that, and not have somebody else help you. I think that's one of the biggest problems I'm seeing with people that are younger than me, like the younger generation, is that they didn't fix their problems. Somebody else fixed their problems for their whole lives, and now they don't know how to do it. And they're just always they're waiting. They're getting to a certain point of any situation, like maybe halfway, and then they just kind of wait because well, I'm used to somebody coming and helping me with this by now, and they just don't know how to do it.
That's insane.
Yeah.
I know millennials get lumped into that category too. Sometimes it's interesting to watch, like each generation, how they talk about the next generation after them. It's never positive.
Yeah, it seems like it's like it skips one, like the next one is opposite of the last one, and then the next one after that is a lot like the first one, you know, and it's weird.
Yeah, they're saying the generation after the last one, so there's
Generation
technically
Z or what?
no, they're even the younger ones.
Oh, okay.
They're saying they're going to be the hardest working generation since the silent generation, which is they were like ridiculous. So it'll be interesting to see if that happens.
It makes sense because of how I think far the other way everything is getting, as far like as how much they're, you know, just the victimhood and there's like so many things, like people calling out things that they aren't, like that isn't a problem, like you know, being triggered and anxiety, and people are like really overusing that, and I think people are being very weak. And I think the people that are seeing it, like us, you know, we're seeing that, and we're going to raise our children to not be that. We're going to raise our children to be the opposite of that.
Yeah, the obstacle is the way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's just interesting to watch this debate, because I'm curious to see how this next election turns out based off of that, because everybody has the right to a degree for free speech. But the interesting thing I see Trump doing, which actually technically violates free speech, is like during some of his events, he like somebody get that guy.
Yeah.
That's illegal.
Yeah.
I was like, because now like relearning some of this stuff, I'm like, oh shit, he's inciting someone else to cause violence towards that other person.
Yeah.
You know, oh, we should go stop these people. You guys should consider doing this.
Yeah.
It seems like it's not breaking the free speech, because he can say whatever he wants, but he's inciting violence, so it isn't legal.
Yeah.
It's interesting to watch that kind of stuff. But just in general, people getting crazy about stuff. But
Yeah, it seems like right now the free speech is more of a. I think most of the problems with free speech that I see in our country is societal things, and you know, people just. It's weird because it's coming from the left, like it's coming from the very far left, and they're the ones that are like supposed to be more liberal, right, and let people do whatever they want. But now they're starting to constrict what people can say and what they can do.
Yeah,
and it's just interesting to see like the extreme go the opposite. Like it's all linear, right? Conservative, liberal is linear, but you go so far liberal that you start protecting, you're protecting people, but then when you're protecting people, you're also constricting pretty much everyone.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes I go to like business mixers and things like that for my job, and I talk to people, and you're not supposed to talk to people when you're drinking about politics, but
religion.
Everybody does it.
Yeah.
And they start talking, and they're like, "So what are you?" Like they always ask me, and I'm like, "I don't know. I don't really fucking know." Like, I'm socialist, I'm communist, I'm Republican, I'm conservative.
I turn and run. If somebody tells me, if somebody asks me about politics when I'm like, pretty much ever, I'm like, no, I don't want to be, no, something else. You want to talk about SpongeBob? Like,
Seriously, I don't. I don't. Oh, I'm like okay with pretty much most of the buttons. See, that's the thing though. I grew up in a very argument kind of family.
Driven,
Although we're very passive aggressive for the most part, but when we start in a debate, we go. Like we that debate goes and it can go any direction and we're okay with it. So I'm very comfortable when somebody disagrees with me. I'm okay with it. It doesn't hurt me as long as you're not literally trying to restrict my livelihood in any capacity. I don't give a shit.
It becomes a good thing.
Yeah.
If an argument is done the right way, then you bring each other closer, right? Like I make you understand me a little bit more, and you make me understand you a little bit more. That's how it should be. Not winning and losing. And that's what I do it all the time. Like I get into an argument, and I'm like, no, I'm right. I'm gonna tell you why I'm right.
Yeah. Because we all think we're right.
Yeah.
I mean, how many people walk around with the belief that, oh, I'm wrong. I'm wrong about all these subjects.
Yeah.
And then just stay in it.
Yeah.
Usually, if you change your belief, you change your belief to something that you believe is right.
Exactly.
So you're always in a perpetual state of believing you're the right person.
Yeah. And I think that the important thing is to understand that, like, even truths, or being right or what is right is always changing. And you understand that if you learn oh wow, like religion, I'm like, oh wow, like I don't really think that the Bible is really real, and I'm like, so I don't think that's true, but that's something, I know that something could change that again, and I'm comfortable with that. It's not like for the rest of my life, this is now right. And that's like doing yourself a disservice when you do that, because you don't open yourself up to the actual truth.
My daughter's family is very, her mother's family is very black and white. Everything's black or everything's white. It's one or the other. There is no gray. And I had a conversation with her a couple weeks ago where I was trying to explain to her, I was like, life is gray.
Your daughter or?
Yeah, I was explaining to my daughter. I'm not going to tell my
Yeah, I was like, interesting.
That's a pretty deep conversation to have with your ex-wife.
Okay.
I wouldn't do that. No, with my daughter. I'm trying to, teach her. I'm trying to share with her. I'm trying to say, okay, what do you think about this subject? Well, I think it's this, and it's always this. And I was like, oh. Okay, so let's talk about grayness, and I've even found historically my family, it was always very black and white. My immediate family is very black and white, and trying to live in more grays and find more grays and be comfortable with those grays is not easy, because you can say the Bible is all wrong. That's actually not true.
Yep.
The Bible has historical evidence that's backed by other historical evidence, like that's outside of their religion. Like there are many historical truths within the Bible. So you can't say the Bible is all wrong. So there, all of a sudden, now that's a contradiction. So what's right and what's wrong? So what did they mean? Was that their perspective, or is this an inherent psychological truth that all humans do? Because it's an old record, rewritten and carried down from each generation of new interpretations. So every generation has rewritten the Bible. People always, I'm sure there'll be plenty of people who are going to disagree with me with that. But it's been rewritten. I mean, look at the NIV, the NASB. Those are all new written versions of the Bible. There's even the Message one that's written in common terms.
Really?
Yeah, it's written in with modern day slang and things like that. It's weird. It's weird to read.
And it's like playing telephone. Like we all played telephone, and you think that, it's translated from a different a different dialect language, you know what I mean? Which we don't have all the words to match up with what Hebrew, right?
Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek.
Yeah, and we don't have all the words to match up exactly what they're saying. So there's going to be things lost in translation, and it's pretty important, you know?
Yeah. But in the same sense, that makes it somewhat more true by it being rewritten, because it's more of a historical record of what each generation has understood. So if you go back each generation, you can see the inherent truths that that generation believed between the lines.
Yeah.
Because they rewrote it because they're like, no, that's not quite what this.
Yeah.
Because Greek is a weird language. One word can have like anywhere between 2 to like 6 different meanings each word, and these are like pronouns and verbs and adjectives. They all can have multiple different meanings. So unless you understood the context, sometimes it can mean different things. So if each generation rewrites it based off of the new one that they believed in, it creates a whole new book, which is new cultural truths. That culture from that religion now all believe this. So that's an inherent truth from that perspective of that culture. So it's truth. It's just that culture's truth. So it's interesting that when people go and say, no, you can't say that, or that isn't true, or that is. I don't know how we got down this rabbit hole.
No, it's fine. I'm all about it. Well, this one might not be a freedom of speech episode, but this is good.
Yeah, but a Christian has the right to say gay people are going to hell.
Yeah.
Is it true? We don't know.
Yeah.
Is there a hell? We don't know.
Yeah.
You know, but whatever. They have the right to say it. Now, they don't have the right to not provide, if they have equal opportunity housing, they cannot restrict a gay person from purchasing or renting that property. They don't have the right legally. Their religion may give them a different belief, but that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's not, the law isn't written like that.
Yeah.
And I guess that's where it's interesting to watch some of this legislation come through, especially through Canada. And I think California didn't do the pronouns. I think they left out that, but they did write a law. I can't remember if it's still in standing or not, offering transgender people the right to any bathroom that they identify with.
Oh, yeah.
And that's law, or it was law. I can't remember if it got struck down or not. But that was law, so you have to follow the law. We have these societal norms that we all agree on, that we all accept, and law just enforces it as the mass majority, right? So you have to abide by these laws. You don't like these laws, you can go protest. It's an option. You can speak out against it, also an option. Or you can get involved with some politics or change it within your organization. So like Hobby Lobby is a great example. They don't hire people who have tattoos. They have the right.
I didn't know that.
It is a form of discrimination, but they're a private organization, so they have the right to say, we don't hire people. It doesn't represent our values, our mission statement, which they write into their mission statement. They have the right to not do that. Is it shitty? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the right, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just interesting watching people change laws. And
you know, it's interesting about that. That I always thought about the bathroom thing. It's like, I don't think people are really understanding that that's putting people into danger. Like, I think that's putting people in danger. Like,
I'm curious about that. Okay, I think we might come into the first category that we disagree.
If you're letting somebody go into whatever bathroom they want, like they're entitled to that, then what's to stop somebody from going into the ladies' restroom that's not transgender but just says that they are, and preying on women or preying on little kids and stuff like that? Like, that's putting people. If it's a solo restroom, that's different. Fuck it, use whatever fucking restroom you want. But if it's a restroom, it's a shared restroom, I think that's putting people into danger.
I don't know, because I think it's one of those categories of what if. I would be interested in seeing any research of that being a very common thing, and a tactic that somebody's used for assault or something like that. Because I think if a person is going to try to assault another person in a restroom, they're going to do it regardless.
True. I mean, it's not gonna. I mean, but it just. I think it's gonna. They probably will. I mean, and I haven't looked into this, but it just seems like it is making it easier. You know what I mean? And I think that. I don't think that it outweighs it. I don't think that the possibility of somebody being endangered outweighs somebody going into a different restroom. Like it.
Yeah, I get that, but I just think that there would probably be better laws to focus on if you're really concerned about assault on women than transgender. Because I think it's a social perception that it could be a harm versus actual any evidence that it is.
Yeah, I don't know, but
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not saying there will be some fucktard who will go and decide that this is going to be their excuse to be able to do it. But the evidence, I just don't see it happening. The only law that I thought within that bill that I actually was like, oh, I don't agree with that. But it became law, so it was like one of those things. It's like you have to adhere to the law that was passed. So I can verbally say I disagree with it, but it still was law or is law. Transgender people could choose whichever team or gender sport that they wanted to go on to based off of the identity that they had. That I disagree. But I can say I disagree with it because speech. It doesn't mean jack shit.
I just think it's but that's like. I think that's common sense, I think it is.
I disagree that it's common sense.
You're right. I think the word common sense or the phrase common sense probably needs to be changed. But, like what we think of as common sense, like that, of course, like, a man shouldn't be able to go onto a women's team and compete. Like, of course not. Then we're biologically different. We talked about that. Like, it just, of course, like, I don't know, man. Like, it just... there is far too much catering to people and babying people.
Yeah.
And that is, like, I know, like we said, there's no, I know I've seen a lot of creepy people out in the world, and fucked up people, and I could see people just using that, being like, well, I'm going to hang out in this restroom and look at girls, look at women sit down on the toilet or whatever, and like, maybe not do anything, but it gets to the point where I think it just gets to the point where women wouldn't be comfortable using the restroom. Like,
I agree. I absolutely agree with that. I think there was also that same stigma though with gay people.
Yeah, but that's a stupid one though, because like you're
a gay guy being in a straight guy's restroom. How is that much different than a transgender man that is potentially a predator being in the? How is it any different of a subject? Because I'm not advocating one way direction.
It's different because there's not a position of dominance. I don't think there's like, if a man goes into a man's restroom, there's no clear dominance there. If a man goes into a women's restroom, there's clear dominance. That's where I think it's dangerous.
Okay, I can see that. It's the thing that all this makes me feel is that I don't feel like I can easily debate, because I was talking to some of my uncles and some other older people throughout the last year, and they used to tell me how they could have a Republican neighbor or a liberal neighbor and literally just go out in the yard, they'd be mowing or doing whatever they do and have a debate, and it was no big deal. And you're like, you voted for Reagan, that's stupid. Like things like that, right? But they were able to have that discussion and still share tools and all that different stuff. But now I have a neighbor, I won't say which neighbor, but
was it one of the two?
Well, technically I have three. But it's so much violence because he knows that I'm liberal-ish. And he starts, with all these slurs, and it's like, I don't give a shit what you believe. Yeah. Just be nice. Yeah. It's that commonality of the inability. And I do think victim culture does play a part in this, but I also think the conservative side has also done the same tactic where it's us or them. And a lot of our tribalism is coming out with us or them. And we either have to find some mediator, and this is why I'm an advocate for a third party in the United States. We have to find some mediator that can speak to both sides, or we need to just fucking grow up.
Well, it just needs to
and be able to have a debate with somebody without hating them.
Well, I think it probably needs to change. Like, there's been different political parties. Like, there's always different ones, right? The new one emerges, a new one. And I think what happens is that they get so far away from each other and so solidified into their own party that it just gets to be the extreme. So then new ones have to come through. And I think that's probably, I think, even if someone's conservative, and just because they're being like, traditionally they're more aggressive, and I think just because they're being aggressive doesn't mean they're not being a victim. I think they're still being a victim. I think not being able to hear somebody say something that you don't agree with is being a victim. I think that being offended by that, and I think what the point that you're getting at is that the problem is that you can't debate with people because you were so afraid of offending people and triggering them, and tough shit. Like, they should be fucking make me uncomfortable. That's gonna be good. Like, let me talk to you and make me uncomfortable. It's probably good. It's gonna be good for me. It's not bad.
Yeah, I like that because it's, how are you? Okay, great example. So I grew up in the Midwest, Minnesota, and I grew up very, very sheltered in both my family and my culture. My beliefs and the things that would come out of my mouth, I'm still like, Jesus Christ, what the fuck did I know?
Yeah.
But I because of the environment I was in and everything was so black and white, I would make these statements so adamantly. And then when I went to left, I did the exact same thing. I was so far left that I would make these adamant statements, and then a conservative would. I had a really good friend and actually a business mentor who's more libertarian, but he has more conservative values. But he would pose these questions to me. One great example was I was saying how discriminatory black culture and everything that was, which is true. But then he's like, if you're talking about poverty, then you need to talk about whites. And I was like, what? And I looked up the stats. More white people are poor than black people, as statistically.
Yeah.
There are more poor white people than there are poor black people. Not that the majority of the percentage. Yeah. And I was like, oh shit, that is a very... I did not. You didn't know. Yeah. I didn't know. But I had the discussion. I was able to.
Exactly.
And now both are true. Both are, now I have two truths that are semi-conflicting by the two opposite parties that are discussing it, but they're both true.
Yeah. And you can just be more precise in the things that you say. You know what I mean?
Correct. Precision of language.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know where that came from. But, I like that you used the word adamant, because I think that's a problem, is being adamant really about anything you say. Like, just being like, this is the end all be all. Like, no, it's this way. Like, no, you say, no, I think it's this way. Like, you gotta do, I think there's gotta be a little bit.
You're very good about that.
Well, because I just don't ever think that I for sure know anything. And so I don't want to come across that way either. I don't want, because it can be kind of offensive, like you're like, oh no, like, I can't think of anything, but you're just like, this is this. And, and people somebody's going to be like, oh no. And then that's going to make them more adamant about what they're saying back to you. And then you just get stuck in this, like, these two people are like fucking pulling on a rope at each other. But when you could just, like, come together. I don't know. You could fucking be like, hey, how about we both hold the rope? I don't know. Am I fucking, I don't know. But I don't know where I'm fucking going. No, but I just think it's really important to, even if you're sure about something, leave like a 20% room for change, like or input, like new input.
Yeah. I was back in Minnesota recently and was talking with my brother, and he's got a few liberal beliefs, but he's still fairly more conservative, especially than I am. But we were talking about immigration, and I just learned about this, is if you're having a debate with somebody, if you find a point that you both agree on, announce to the person that you both agree.
Yeah.
Because it creates more of a...
unity.
Yeah. Like, oh, in this area where we agree. And then they say another point, you don't disagree. You'd be like, I don't agree, but tell me why you believe that.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of sort it out. It'll give you new perspectives and alter how you believe or don't believe in something. Because I, for the longest time, thought working visas was an awesome thing. Come to find out, one of the biggest contributors to sex trafficking is work visas. A lot of these organizations that will get work visas will basically hold these people hostage, either for sweatshops or for sex trafficking. But it's kind of, I think it leans more towards, and don't quote me on this, but I believe it leans more towards sweatshops. Is those work visas. They have them come in, they start working there, and then they hold them hostage. Like, oh, you don't like this environment? Well, I guess I'll just have to cancel your work visa and you go back. Like it's blackmail, you know?
Yeah.
And he was saying that if you really want to change immigration, that you should nullify that and put something else in its place. And I was like,
Yeah.
I never thought of it before, but if I hadn't been willing to listen why he was anti-work visas, I would never have known that. And you know, this was training that was given to him when he was in the military, and he has actual statistics that was shown to him because of his specific training. I was like, fuck.
I'm sure it's all in the approach, like the way, like if he had approached you in a different way, like then it turns it from a debate into a fight, you know. And it just nothing ever good comes from a fight, you know. Normally.
Yeah, when you're so set. But that's the beauty of free speech, is that I believe, and why it's so important to protect it, is that we're all given the equal rights to share our opinion. The initial intent of it was so that we all could have a healthy debate.
Make each other better.
Yeah, without it escalating to violence. And that was like the cap. It's like, you can go from here, like, we all agree, to fuck you, you're an asshole, I don't agree with you, I'm going home. Like that, like up to that level. And then past that point is illegal.
Yeah.
When you start vandalizing, when you start trespassing, when you start violence, like those are illegal. Now you broke other laws.
Yes.
And that's wonderful. I think we should have that. And I do agree that a lot of this debate within the American politics is wonderful, that we're finally starting to talk to each other. Even though over the last couple of elections, I felt like we've become more divisive than we ever have. But I feel like now we're just starting to, like, for me, I was ultra liberal. And then for me to come back and start looking at some of these beliefs and start nullifying, and like you said, I think versus I know.
Yeah. I at the end of the day, I think the most important thing to realize about free speech is how we conduct it, or what we expect in it, and how we conduct ourselves within when we think about free speech, and not how we speak. Like, everybody thinks about free speech like, yeah, like I say whatever the fuck I want. No, it's not about how you speak. It's about how you take it, like how you receive the speech. That's the most important thing, because that's where the problem is. It's how people are receiving the speech.
I agree.
And I think we're all just as much to blame for it as the people that we actually think are to blame for it.
Yeah. It's everybody is for free speech until something said
they get offended.
They get offended, and you know what? Like, it's interesting the consequences. Social media platforms are a great example. They're anti-hate hate speech, and they've actually gotten some flack for kicking out neo-Nazis. And they had to like prove why they kicked out neo-Nazis from their platform. And it wasn't that they were saying, you guys can't say this on our platform. You can. You just can't say hate speech.
Yeah.
And they didn't understand the difference. The neo-Nazis didn't understand the difference between free speech and hate speech. Guys, like, sort that one out in your head. But
I was just talking to Josh Aviles yesterday, and he was talking about his Twitter. He's like, man, it's like porn on there sometimes. You like see, like saying like the stuff he sees. I was like, yeah, but don't misgender somebody. You're gonna get kicked out.
Josh, he's a funny guy. I love his posts.
Yeah.
Social media is interesting because it's a private body, you know.
Yeah.
But But where it starts getting weird is like the FCC, the regulating body of communications. They have pretty strict rules on public communications, but there's like this gray line that comes back to that net neutrality. Like, what are you allowed to say on your platform and not on your platform? I'm dealing a lot with this in my industry right now, where I had a domestic violence awareness organization that wanted to post an ad about a taco event, and that was it. They cannot advertise anymore unless I had a verification, which I finally received, that they were a legit body, an organization within the United States. They couldn't advertise because of the whole political atmosphere of, the Russians and other foreign bodies. Yeah. So the FCC has been regulating what can and can't be said, or how it's said, or who says it on their platform, because it's interacting with political spheres. So that it's interesting watching certain organizations get hit. Same thing with pharmaceutical industry. They got hit really hard as well. There's a lot of things I'm facing with that, where they aren't allowed to say certain things anymore because the government is saying you guys can't say it anymore. But they're a public or they're a private entity, so they have to oh, is this worth the fine, or not? And then they kind of have to go about that legal battle with Zuckerberg and all his nonsense. Yeah. But it's interesting watching them trying to regulate their bodies. Yeah, right there. He's yawning.
Yeah, we know. We know. Yeah, it's yeah. I don't know what the solution is to all of it. I think it's
talking.
I think the solution is within the individual, like within each individual, just to realize your responsibility and your input to it. Like that you are not doing the things that you're preaching against.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think the mental health epidemic that we're having in America, and the drug epidemic, is playing a large contributor. And I'm not talking about necessarily heroin. I'm talking about Ambien. It's creating more and more unstable mental individuals that don't have the same reasoning capacity to be able to function in a normal debate without they don't have the same brain chemistry.
Yeah.
And trying to have a reasonable debate without the proper mental health, and then someone tells you that, and you believe them, that they're going to take your rights away from you, or this person's trying to hate you, or trying to take away your freedoms. All of a sudden you get angry, and you don't have the biological chemistry to be able to cope with that debate, so you get angry.
Yeah.
And it's an easy turn for those people to force you into some form or state of violence. And this is not one party, this is both parties.
Yeah.
And I think that's why not just your mental but your physical health is so important, because it stems into so many aspects of your life. I've noticed people, like, a great example for me was I had nose surgery years ago, and I found out that I was getting about 40% of the sleep that was necessary. And my grades at the time were like C's.
Sleep or oxygen? I remember you took.
Yeah, both.
Okay.
So my oxygen level during the day and at night.
Yeah.
But at night was the real damaging factor. It was broken in 3 places and twisted. And my grades changed pretty much after a month of healing, and I started getting more oxygen flow when I was sleeping. My grades went up, 1.5 letter grades. That's dramatic. So just that simple fact of proper sleep changed how I thought, who I thought I was, how I communicated, tolerance level for conflict. That's a small thing, and how many of us are sleep deprived? And then you throw Ambien into that mix, and you have a monster.
And it goes back to like what I was saying, where there's so many things to help us not deal with our problems. Yes. And I think that is a large contributor to the mental illness I think obviously there's the chemical imbalances, but I think nature and nurture are always together. They always work together for things, and I think a lot of it is the fact that a lot of people are not being taught how to deal with their problems anymore. That's why, I mean, I want to talk about this, but I want to wait a little bit. But like my decision to stop smoking weed, and that's like, it's been huge for me because I realized that like marijuana is better than a lot of other things, a lot of other medications, but it is still a way out from your problems. You know, from whatever you got to deal with, you are still having something else help you, and you're not understanding how to deal with it. So when you don't use it, you freak out.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah,
it's very true. I think we have a lot of those crutches. I know I still do, even though I'm constantly trying to remove them from my atmosphere. I still have them, and I still lean on them, and it does affect you. It's like we all like to think, oh, I don't do drugs, or someone says I don't do drugs, but on the daily basis, we're constantly inundating our bodies with other chemicals that society just doesn't label as
they don't deem drugs. Yeah.
So, and they're all crutches.
Yeah, I think it's just, I think it's okay to have things help you get through life, but I think it's not okay to be naive to them and ignorant to them. I think it's your duty and responsibility to understand those things. Like, okay, this is, I'm really it's helping me get through this. So when it's taken away, that you kind of realize that you're kind of in for some shit. You're gonna have, it's gonna be a little bit harder.
Yeah, I agree. It's a constant thought in my head about that. But I think the second you turn 18 years old, and I technically think it should be younger, but I think the second you turn 18 years old, you're an adult.
Oh yeah.
You have the responsibility. It's no longer your parents' fault for anything. Your parents probably screwed you up, probably fucked you up. They probably taught you bad diet, or they never kept you accountable for your actions. They might have let you do drugs or whatever. Like you might have been abused, all that different stuff. It is not fair. It's not right. It's horrible. But it's now your responsibility to resolve those issues. What are you going to do with it? You have to deal with it.
What are you going to do about it? That's exactly. I agree with you 150,000%. Like so much. Like, yeah, things happen. Shitty things happen to all of us. Shittier things happen to some of us. But you're not going to get handed anything because of that. Like, you're not entitled to more because you were given less. You just have to, it's your responsibility to do a little bit more than what some people have to do.
Yeah, what is it? We have the right to pursue happiness. You don't have the right to happiness. You have the right to pursue it. And it's hard. It has to be small steps. Because if you came from that family that I just described, and you weren't taught the laws, you weren't taught how to budget, you weren't taught all these different things, you're not going to be able to be at a super high functioning level right off the bat. There are going to be a million barriers that you as an individual have to work at. But small changes compound. Changing your social circle can change a million things in your life. Like, you think that, oh, I'm unmotivated. Well, are you surrounded by unmotivated people? I'm not saying cancel all your friends, but maybe find some people who are motivated, and that's going to
distance the one. Yeah.
Exactly. Maybe there's a few within that group of old friends who start seeing you get motivated, and they're going to do it as well. But I think it's all important, and it's all inclusive in this, because we're trying to be better citizens. We're trying to be better humans. We're trying to enjoy life. And all these laws that we put in place go all the way back to prehistoric era, where I don't like you, I'm clubbing you over the head. Now a whole generation is lost. And that's damaging to society, because now I have to go hunt that elk by my fucking self.
Yeah.
But that was a consequence for that action. Well, that's not a very good way of living. Oh, that tribe took this thing, we're going to war. We basically wipe out both of our tribes, so that these laws were all created so that we could cooperate.
Yeah.
And that's, I keep saying all the things, like, we're created for cooperations and we tell great stories. Those are the two things that we're really good at.
Yeah.
And these laws help us do that, and we need
Yeah.
to utilize them properly.
And they said, they need to have the right intentions.
Correct.
The laws, like they need to. That's what it should all be. All the laws should be intention for us to be cooperating, to be better. When back to what you were saying about, the right to pursue happiness and stuff, and but doing it for yourself. Last night we met a family. Like they're from England, and I guess their daughter goes to one of the Claremont universities, and they were telling he told me one saying, and he said it's an old saying, but like in America, there's if you see somebody drive by in a Corvette, you say, oh man, I'm gonna get a Corvette someday, but if you're in England, you see somebody driving by in a Rolls Royce, they say, oh, like how come I don't have a Rolls Royce? It's because they have more of a hierarchy, right? And it's like everything's set. Like you don't have as much room to move up, but it's the mentality. And I feel like us as a society are moving more towards the mentality of, oh, why don't I have that? Like it's instead of I'm gonna go get that.
Yeah, and if you really want it, you have to work for it, and you could steal it, but there's laws again that are gonna stop you from that pursuit. So it's just interesting watching how laws are being created. I just don't want any laws that force societal norms that it's like the way I think about laws should be what the common society deems necessary for the pursuit of the well-being of all of us. And I don't want there being laws put in place that we all don't agree on, that forces people to do those things, forces people to be nice, because then that creates a new issue, and then there's going to have to be a new law to put in place to solve that issue,
Yeah.
and then we get inundated with all these laws, and then before we know it, all our rights are slowly dwindling. It's even happening now, where your rights as an individual are slowly being restricted by other government bodies so that they benefit.
It kind of seems like
society benefits.
It kind of seems like, I don't know how it would be better, but it kind of seems like 51% isn't enough, for something to be implemented like that, for like a new law to be like imposed on people. It seems like 51% isn't enough, because that's not 51% of the population. That's 51% of the people that went out and voted.
Correct. Or in some cases, 51 or not 51. I think it's 60. In the Congress or the Senate, I forget. They have different percentages. I always mix them up in my head.
Yeah, it's definitely more.
Yeah, but still, those are the representatives, and they can still vote against their constituency if they want. And because there's so many laws being pushed and passed, and these filibusters and all these extra little side laws being pushed into other bills to kind of kill the bill.
Yeah.
And then they get pushed through anyways.
The sneaky as fuck.
All these weird laws get put into place. I heard somewhere that there's still a law, I forget what state it is. Maybe it's Connecticut, or is it Kentucky? I forget. But you cannot dance with your horse down the street. It's a law, still in place. Still fucking in place.
You can always find those weird laws if you look back.
What the hell?
Yeah.
Like, there should be some committee that goes through and says, hey guys, do we all still agree on this one?
Yeah.
I say let the guy dance. It sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, my neighbor got arrested for dancing with a horse. I thought we were past this.
Yeah. It's weird, but...
Yeah, well, fuck, I feel like we could go on this all day.
I do too. This is a good subject.
Yeah, we might have to revisit it, I guess.
Yeah, maybe we get somebody who can, who's more of an expert on the subject, like a lawyer.
I'm talking about.
You think you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. There we go.
All right. Well, I guess that's it for us, guys.
You guys enjoyed our rambling.
Yep.
We had fun. Hope you did. And love you guys.
Love you too. All right.